Welcome to Tefo, his-tory channel. My name is Catharina Magrietha Kruger and I will be telling you the story behind the his-tory of Shaka Zulu, or the second part of his story of how he became the king of the Zulu nation. If you haven't watched my previous video of Shaka's upbringing and where he got his name and who was the Nguni people, please watch the first video on Shaka Zulu's story. Let's start historying around. Shaka then was with the Ndwandwe and commander of the army for 6 years. And then the news came. kaSenzangakhona of the Zulu people passed away in 1816. The elders of the Zulu people chose a successor for kaSenzangakhona out of his 14 sons. Needless to say, it wasn't Shaka. It was his half-brother that was chosen, and his name was Sikunyana. Then Ndwandwe and Shaka made a plan. Ndwandwe said, go to your father's clan, the Zulus, kill whoever is on the throne and take over your place as the chief of the Zulu people. You can take a whole army with you, and whoever is in your way, just conquer them. So then Shaka then went all the way with his army to the Zulus. When he arrived there, his mother Nandi was with him, and the Zulus were quite shocked. Oh my goodness, what is Shaka doing here with a whole regiment with him? And by that time, already the news had spread that Shaka was a fearless leader, and he killed anybody that was on or in his way. So he said to the elders, so you chose Sikunyana above me. And he told Sikunyana, you kill the elders now. And he had given him assegai or isipapa. And he said, now kill the elders. And after that, Shaka killed his own half-brother. And without fighting further, he became the new chief of the Zulus. And he told all the other wives of kaSenzangakhona, his father, make way for Nandi, his mother, and she became the Ndwandwe, the big she-elephant, the matriarch of the Zulu clan. And they just submitted because they were so afraid of Shaka. Furthermore, Shaka then celebrated in his own way. Before the last Bayeti Nkosi could fall on the ears of Shaka, he started killing all the people that were nasty towards him and his mother, as well as the Elangeni people, his mother's people, who bullied him as a child and didn't like their own chief's daughter, Nandi. So what he did was, some of them he burned alive. Some of them he had taken a sharpened stick and put it in their behinds and planted them in the ground as palisades around the village. And then he actually named his new kraal or homestead Buluwayo, which means place of slaughter. The first thing that Shaka did was trained his army, and everything he was taught and knew at Ndwandwe's army, he then started implementing it in his own army. At one stage he had about 40,000 impis or warriors. He also divided them in age groups or age regiments, and the young men couldn't stay at home nor could they marry until they proved themselves in a battle. And then Shaka only will tell them, yes, you may get married or not. They trained in this buffalo head formation to perfection. They trained without shoes, and when they complained, "Ooh, my feet is hurting," or my feet are hurting, then Shaka then let them dance on thorns. And if one of them tried to open his mouth and complain, he would kill them. Whenever Shaka went to the smaller groups and took them over, they had to swear alliance to the Ndwandwe clan and Dingiswayo and not to Shaka. So the Ndwandwe was growing as the strong nation. One would think that if stuff didn't happen as it did, maybe as tourists and South Africans, we would have visited Ndwandwe land today instead of Zulu land. But there was another nation or another clan. They were called Ndwandwes, and their leader was also a fearless leader. His name was Zwide. Now, Zwide was also taking over small little clans underneath the Ndwandwes. And now the fight was really brewing between the Ndwandwes and the Ndwandwe. Zwide, the chief of the Ndwandwe people, he was so jealous of the growing power of Dingiswayo and the Ndwandwes. So was the hatred and the jealousy of Zwide's mother towards Dingiswayo. Her name was Ntombazi, and Ntombazi had this weird hobby. She collected all the skulls of the chiefs that her son took over and killed. She took these skulls and put it on a shelf in her hut. And she was looking forward to the day when her son could bring her the skull of Dingiswayo. So in 1818, the Ndwandwe people of Zwide went into the territory of the Ndwandwes, and they started killing all the smaller tribes and the chiefs of the tribes that fell under the Ndwandwes. They took all the skulls of the chiefs and took it to Mama to put on her shelf. Then the Ndwandwes retrieved once again, and they were waiting now for Dingiswayo and the Ndwandwes to attack them. Dingiswayo was furious. So he had sent word all the way to the Zulu clan and to Shaka to say, please bring your army. Please come and help us to fight the Ndwandwes. But Dingiswayo didn't wait. He fell into Zwide's trap. He went into the land or the area of the Ndwandwes, and one evening, late afternoonish time, he and a few of his men were walking in the bushes, alone, careless, and they walked into some of the Ndwandwe soldiers or warriors. They killed Dingiswayo and then beheaded him, and off went his head or his skull to Mama and Zwide. Ntombazi was so happy. She had put Dingiswayo's skull on the top of the shelf. But still, Mama wasn't happy. Her museum of skulls shorted one skull. She wanted the skull of Shaka Zulu. Now the Ndwandwes had no leader. And when Shaka arrived at the area where Dingiswayo was killed, he then said, I will be your new leader. And he took all the Ndwandwe clans under his wing. And then he also took his Zulus, and he said, now we are the Zulu nation. When Zwide heard about this, he was frustrated, and Mama was jumping up and down. She said, this is a reason more to find Shaka, kill him, and bring his skull to me. So, once again, Shaka showed his absolute genius way of fighting. He fell back into Zulu territory. Remember, previously it was Ndwandwe country, but now it was Zululand, and he retrieved back. So when the Ndwandwe people and Zwide arrived in their piece of land, the Zulu land or the old Ndwandwe land, they didn't find anybody. They didn't find small villages that they could attack and, eat all the small villages' food. They were nothing. It was nearly like no man's land. So for days and days, the Ndwandwe searched for this newly found Zulu nation of Shaka Zulu. They couldn't find them. And then, suddenly, when they were very tired and very hungry, they entered a valley, the Mflatuze Valley. And then, Shaka and all his impies, all his warriors, surrounded them in this valley. And they were all slaughtered. Zwide escaped with just his life. And until his death, he wandered the area of Zululand. And he died alone. His mother, Ntombazi, she was already an old lady and she couldn't escape with her son. So she stayed behind, and then Shaka arrived. And he took Ntombazi and he threw her into her hut with all his skulls. And with her and the skulls, he took a very hungry hyena and he threw the hyena in with him. For days, Ntombazi threw the skulls at the hungry hyena until she was very tired, and then she gave in. And with her screams, Shaka then told his men to light her hut and it be burned to the ground. Well, with Dingiswayo out of the way and with Zwide out of the way, all the clans were united under the Zulu nation, King Shaka's nation. Shaka ruled them all the way from the Pongola River to the Tugela River. Everything was Zulu land. Shaka was an absolute monarch. He was a fearless ruler. He was brutal. Before the Zulus would go into war and attack, he would shout, "Victory or death!" And what that meant was, if you do not kill the enemy and you would get home, you would be killed. Also, when they returned back home after a big fight, all their ikwas or their stabbing spears were inspected. If they were not covered with blood, you would be a coward and you would be killed. Also, at one stage, Shaka said, usually, you served in my army until you're around about mid-20s, and then you can start marrying. But then he said, that's a little bit stupid. If your men would marry, their minds would go somewhere else and not to the fight. You may only be released from the army or as an impi when you are 40 years of age. He also said, it is stupid to take my skilled warriors, my indunas, away and let them go marry and not focus on the attack. Woo! So you can just imagine. Without sex and without marriage, that caused a lot of problems. And so these older men then started to rebel, and they were furious at Shaka. And then Shaka decided, okay, is this what you want to do? So then he called all the men that complained and said, parade in front of me. And when you were one of these guys that complained, you were killed. Shaka shouted, kill the old men. So needless to say, nobody else complained after that. You probably wonder what happened to Nandi, the sweet one, the mother of Shaka Zulu. Well, Shaka never married, and he saw his mother as his queen. Apparently, she was quite brutal and took advantage of her whole position as a queen of the nation. And she took, I would say, revenge on the people that she didn't like or treated her unfairly in her previous life. She was called the Ndwandwe. Ndwandwe means the big she-elephant, the matriarch of the people. She lived until 1827, and with her death, they said Shaka went totally mad, and that was the beginning of the end for Shaka. At first, when his mother passed, he had picked a few of his subjects to be executed so that everybody must mourn with him. This has actually spread through the whole nation of the Zulus, and everybody lived in fear. Shaka also said, nobody may drink milk nor plant crops for a whole year. Everybody had to mourn with him. He also said no woman may get pregnant. That nobody was supposed to have sex. If a woman was found pregnant, she was killed together with her husband. Nandi was then buried with her handmaidens, and 12,000 impis or warriors were guarding the grave for a year. It is also said that Shaka, in the time frame of a year, had killed 7,000 of his own people so that everybody must mourn with him. He had lost his mind. This broke the spirit of the Zulu nation. You had some followers that would really protest against Shaka, and then they were immediately killed. You also had people that would praise him in public, and then when they turned their backs, they would spread hatred towards Shaka. The terror stopped when the older sister of Shaka's father, Mkabai, plotted Shaka's death. She went to Dingaan, the half-brother of Shaka, and she told him he must kill Shaka. Now, Dingaan, he wasn't really a warrior, and the people said he loved himself more than anything else, and he hated it when he was placed in the regiments to go and fight with Shaka's army. He was sort of a coward and loved staying at home. So in 1828, Shaka had sent his army into Mozambique to go and conquer some of the tribes there. And Dingaan and another half-brother of Shaka, Mhlangane, was in the army. And then when they were a few days on the road, they faked illness and then they were sent home. But this was all part of the plan. When they got home, they killed Shaka. But before Shaka was killed, he said to Dingaan, Dingaan, you will not rule for a long time, because already I can see the swallows on the mountains. And Shaka referred then to the white people. Why the white people? He saw them as swallows because they had built houses out of mud instead of grass huts. So he called them swallows. Already they were on the Drakensberg Mountains, the Dragon Mountains of KwaZulu-Natal. Those were the voortrekkers, or the Afrikaans people that moved away from the Cape Colony, away from British rule, over the mountains to start looking for farming land. Dingaan had carried this omen, or the last words of Shaka, in his back head. And when he met Piet Retief, the Afrikaans voortrekker, or people who moved first, the pioneers leader. He had it in the back of his mind. But that is a story for another day. So, history lovers, this was then the story behind the his-tory of Shaka Zulu. Bayeti Nkosi. Bayeti Nkosi. The king of the Zulu nations. We salute you. Now today you can visit Zululand. It is part of the province of KwaZulu-Natal here in South Africa. Beautiful rolling hills of KwaZulu-Natal. Still you would find many Zulus living there. They don't live in their small grass huts anymore. No, they are modern and they do wear modern clothing, but still they are a very proud nation of South Africa, part of our rainbow nation. If you really want to see how the Zulus lived previously, you can visit a cultural village which is called Shaka Land. This is also where the movie was made, in this little village. It's called Shaka Land, and there you would see how they made the itwa, how the Zulus made their little grass huts, and you'd see them dancing, because that is quite a big spectacular, seeing a Zulu dance, picking up their legs very high and falling on their buttocks. History lovers, join me next week for another his story, or a her story, or their story, or an animal story. Who knows? Enjoy a cup of coffee further, and happy historying around. Remember to hit subscribe, like and share. Ciao.